Hello, this is my FEMA disaster data analysis. I obtained my data from the FEMA website directly. This is data that takes place based on a hurricane that occurred in Georgia in September 2024. So FEMA's role, it's a U.S. government agency that leads the nation's disaster response. This can come from hurricanes, floods, and wildfires. Recently, in the past decade, there have been disasters in North Carolina, Hurricane Matthew, Hurricane Florence, and most recently, Hurricane Helene that heavily hit Western North Carolina. This data is relevant because it is relevant to government shutdowns and the preservation of disaster data. So my data source comes directly from the FEMA website. I have 100 applicants who applied for FEMA assistance in September 2024. The way that I cleansed it, I removed any blank columns, any irrelevant data that would make interpreting it difficult. And I focused on the demographics of the applicants. Characteristics such as the number of people in their household, the type of residence that they lived at, their gross income. Another thing that I did was I removed irrelevant and blank tables. I ensured the data set consistency, and I prepared the data for RStudio analysis by inserting the data directly into RStudio. My density plots show most households had one child under 2 years old. Applicants had about one child 2 to 5, one child age 6 to 18, or on average one adult 19 to 64, and one senior over 65 years old. This incident type, it was 100% a hurricane. The date that it occurred was September 30th, 2024. The disaster number was 4830, and the state was Georgia. I found that most applicants came from Chatham County, Georgia, and the most impacted cities were Savannah and Augusta. The majority of the applicants were between 35 to 49 years old. The majority of the applicants had their gross income as between $30,000 and $60,000 per year. Most of them owned their residence as opposed to renting, and most of them lived in a house or duplex. Households with children 6 to 18 incomes had an average income of about $175,000. Households with seniors incomes varied between $15,000 to $120,000, and adults aged 19 to 64 incomes mostly between $30,000 and $60,000 per year. Key findings: FEMA applicants share consistent disaster details, same type. Date, state, demographics were primarily middle-aged, moderate incomes, and homeowners. Geographic concentration was Savannah and Augusta, Chatham County. Income patterns varied by household age composition. Limitations of the data: there were too many counties and city variables, too difficult to graph clearly. Some variables, incident type, date, state, were uniform with limited insight. Suggestion that I would do differently would be to diversify the data set with multiple states and incident types. And another thing I would do would probably be to cut down on the amount of applicants that I use. For example, perhaps cutting them in half, or maybe even down to 25 to get a smaller data set. In conclusion, FEMA data provides valuable insights into applicant demographics and disaster impact. It is useful for preparedness, funding allocation, and community support strategies. And like I said, future work would be to expand data set scope for richer analysis.